This study abroad program provides a historical and critical backdrop to food security, culture, and resilience in Cuba. It is sponsored in part by the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Virginia Tech, and it takes place over spring break in March 2018. Most Americans know little about Cuba, other than the fact that it's just 90 miles from the United States, and we don't have a very good relationship with them. Like many countries in the New World, there was a demand for agricultural labor, and the small population that Cuba had quickly died off within 100 years. This led to the unprecedented trafficking of some 8 million slaves, and the Spanish crown occupied a series of garrisons around the island to ensure agricultural production. The Spanish colony of Cuba had relatively good location, with access to the Atlantic colonies of Great Britain, also to the Isthmus of Panama. The 1791 slave revolt in nearby Haiti instilled fear in the Spanish, and many French sugarcane planters left the island. The idea of an independent Black Caribbean state threatened the global economy. Outmigration took place to other countries throughout the Western Hemisphere, and when the United States purchased Louisiana in 1803, many sugarcane planters came back to Cuba. The fundamental basis of the 19th century Cuban economy was slave labor. The Americans treated Cuba as a Mediterranean colony, and indeed the Caribbean was referred to as the American Mediterranean Sea. It was reinforced by the notion put forth by James Monroe called the American Monroe Doctrine, which basically said that Europe should not be meddling in American affairs. So agriculture, slavery, and sugar production provided the social stratification of the 19th century that still holds place today in the new millennium. And most of those blacks came from the poorest parts of the island, the Appalachia of the island, if you will, in eastern Cuba, which happened to be the home region from where Fidel and Raúl Castro came. From the mid-19th century into the early 2000s, sugar was king in Cuba. It provided the main source of hard currency. During the Cold War, Cuba would exchange 1 ton of sugar for 1 ton of oil. But with the collapse of the Soviet trading bloc, all that came to an end. This map shows the expanse of sugar production and how it is contracted from the late 19th century in the top map to the middle panel in the late 1980s and what happened in 2002, when over half of 152 sugar mills were closed because they were unproductive and expensive to operate. Today, food security is the #1 issue, and the ration book shown here generally runs out by the middle of the month. Subsidized products for vulnerable groups like children are scarce. Alas, Cuba, like Puerto Rico and Haiti, has become dependent on importing food in containers from other nations. Not unlike the mechanization of agriculture in the American South, these dramatic global shifts impacted blacks disproportionately hard, and unemployment in the Eastern Island among black men is very great. In response to the food crisis, a number of cooperatives and innovative agricultural production units have cropped up around the island. But much of the food that they produced is destined for tourism. Products like arugula and lettuce aren't common features in the Cuban diet. Outmigration from the eastern provinces to the capital city of Havana is illustrated by these young men shown here. Many folks from the eastern part of the island, who are referred to by Havanans as Palestinos or Palestinians because they come from the east, search for employment in the capital city. Many countryside migrants have held on to their agricultural roots and work in the agricultural sector as middle folks and transfer agents. The revolution promised social services for everyone, regardless of race and geographic location. It also promised to provide another Cuba, a different Caribbean island, one that wasn't reliant on tourism, an island of chambermaids, and an island of bartenders. Education, preschool care, universal health care are all characteristics of the revolution, and it has fulfilled its obligation. Education is mandatory until 16 years of age. But a highly restricted labor market has forced talented musicians, artists, and dancers into the tourist sector. Indeed, some of the most coveted jobs are in the island's growing tourist resorts. Many university-trained artists, dancers, and professionals will work without wages in restaurants and nightclubs. They do, however, receive the benefit of being able to sell CDs and get tips. One of the enigmas that this trip attempts to understand is how is it possible that a university-trained engineer, doctor, or lawyer can make more in one day working in the tourist sector than he or she can working in the trade for which they were trained. So what is the challenge that the Cuban island faces? Well, in 2010, President Raul Castro promised to downsize the 2.5 million state workers and allow many of them to work in the private sector. The trouble is that there are only 201 jobs in which these private sector employers and employees can work. Everyone must be a self-employed worker. There are no small and medium businesses. Most of the jobs are referred to as timberiches, or nickel and dime mom and pop operations, that although they provide a steady income and generally pay more than state jobs, really aren't significant economic developer engines. International travelers continue to flock to the island to appreciate its architecture, the craftsmanship of a bygone era, and to appreciate the many UNESCO World Heritage sites, such as this one in Cienfuegos. We try to get you inside Cuba homes. We try to avoid the trappings of normal tourist haunts. We'll examine successful entrepreneurs who work in food production. Virginia Tech has a long history of bringing students to Cuba, dating back to 1992. So we know what to look for. We try to tease out the innovative and the surprising. So please consider joining us for Food Security, Resilience, and Culture in Cuba, taking place over spring break.
Hi, I am Dr. Kim Nawalny at Virginia Tech in the Department of Agriculture, Leadership, and Community Education. And I want to say hello and to let you know that I'll be working with Joe Scarpese with the Center for Cuban Culture and Economy this spring for a study abroad course to Cuba. We are looking forward to this opportunity. We'll be taking students and interested faculty who are interested to learn more about Cuban culture, food security, food sovereignty, and community resilience. If you're interested, let us know. We'll hope to hear from you. Thank you.